The studio lights came up as they always did, warm and familiar, washing over the stage that had hosted thousands of mornings before. The audience applauded on cue. The music faded beneath the sound, and from the outside, everything looked the same. But something in the air felt different, quieter somehow, like the room itself sensed a shift before anyone spoke. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was subtle, the kind of change you only notice when you stop expecting everything to be normal. The smile that tried to hold steady. Kelly walked out with the smile viewers had known for years, bright and practiced, the kind that usually set the tone for the entire hour. Yet anyone watching closely could see the strain beneath it, the faint redness around her eyes, the careful way she blinked as if steadying herself. Beside her, Mark matched her pace, greeting the audience with warmth, but his voice carried a gentler edge than usual. They sat behind the desk, and instead of easy banter, there was a pause, a long one, heavy enough to make people at home shift in their seats. When silence takes the stage, the quiet stretched, uncomfortable but honest. Kelly glanced down at her hands, fingers lightly intertwined as if grounding herself. The audience murmured softly, sensing something unscripted was unfolding. Finally, she looked up and took a breath, the sound of it picked up by the microphones. When she spoke, her voice held, but only just. "Good morning," she said, then stopped, swallowing emotion. "Today isn't going to feel like a typical show." The words landed gently, but they carried weight. Speaking to more than a room. Kelly lifted her gaze beyond the studio, past the lights and cameras, as if addressing not just the people in front of her, but the millions who had welcomed her into their mornings for decades. She spoke about time, how quickly it moves, how quietly it changes people. She talked about gratitude, about growing up on television, about learning who she was while the world watched. Her words weren't an announcement, they were a reflection, honest and unguarded, the kind that doesn't need headlines to feel important. The choice to be unscripted. Behind the scenes, no one had prepared a script for this moment. There were no teleprompter lines to follow, no carefully polished phrasing. What viewers were hearing was real thought spoken out loud. Kelly admitted that after years of routine, something inside her had shifted. She spoke about the pressure of always being on, about how easy it is to lose the line between who you are and who you're expected to be. The room listened, not as an audience, but as witnesses. Mark's quiet. Understanding throughout it all, Mark remained still, his presence steady. He didn't interrupt or rush her. When she paused, he waited. When her voice wavered, he leaned in slightly, a silent signal of support. At one point, he placed his hand on the desk near hers, not to draw attention, but to remind her she wasn't alone. The gesture said more than words could have, and viewers felt it instantly. Not an ending, but a question. Kelly made something clear without making declarations. This wasn't about drama or conflict. There was no scandal, no sudden fracture. It was about asking an honest question. What happens when the life you've built no longer fits the way it once did? She spoke about exhaustion, about gratitude existing alongside the desire for change, and about how loving something doesn't mean you owe it every future version of yourself. The weight of routine. She described mornings that begin before the sun, the rhythm of schedules and segments, the comfort and the cost of repetition. There was no bitterness in her voice, only awareness. She talked about wanting to experience time differently, to move through a morning without a countdown, to drink coffee without watching the clock, to exist without immediately performing. The simplicity of those wishes made them powerful. A universal feeling. What resonated most wasn't her career or her platform. It was the feeling behind her words. Anyone who has ever stayed too long in a role because it once brought joy recognized themselves in that moment. Anyone who has ever felt guilty for wanting change felt seen. Kelly wasn't stepping away from gratitude. She was standing inside it, acknowledging that even the best chapters don't last forever. Holding space for what was images appeared on the screen behind her, not as a farewell montage, but as a reminder of time lived fully. Laughter, interviews, moments of connection with viewers. The room softened as memories passed by. Kelly watched them quietly, a small smile breaking through the emotion. "I don't regret any of it," she said softly, and it was clear she meant every word. Choosing honesty over certainty, Mark finally spoke, not to redirect the moment but to honor it. He said how proud he was, not of achievements but of courage. He reminded everyone that growth doesn't always come with a clear plan, and that uncertainty isn't failure. Kelly laughed lightly through tears, acknowledging the fear that comes with standing at the edge of something new. "Fear," she said, "doesn't mean you're wrong. Sometimes it means you're honest." Gratitude without goodbye. She made a point to say what this moment wasn't. It wasn't a final goodbye or a neatly wrapped conclusion. It was gratitude spoken out loud while there was still time to say it. She thanked the viewers for their patience, their loyalty, their presence on days she struggled more than she let on. She thanked them for showing up, even when they didn't know how much it mattered. The audience responds. The applause that followed wasn't loud or celebratory. It was steady, respectful, full of understanding. People stood not because they were told to, but because something genuine had just passed between strangers. Kelly placed her hand over her heart, visibly moved, and Mark squeezed her hand in return. It was a shared moment, brief but lasting. A thought that lingers. Before the show moved on, Kelly leaned forward slightly as if closing the distance between herself and the camera. She spoke about identity, about remembering that a role is something you do, not something you are. She reminded viewers that it's okay to change your mind, to rest, to choose yourself without erasing what came before. Her voice was calm now, steadier, like someone who had finally said the thing they'd been carrying for a long time. Walking forward, with meaning. As the cameras prepared to cut, there was no dramatic sign-off, no finality, just a quiet understanding that moments like this matter because they're honest. Whatever comes next, Kelly made clear, would be built on the foundation of everything that came before, not as an escape, but as an evolution. What remains? After the lights. When the screen eventually faded, what stayed with viewers wasn't shock or speculation, it was recognition. Recognition that even familiar routines can change, that gratitude and growth can exist together, and that choosing honesty is sometimes the bravest thing a person can do. The era didn't end in that moment. It simply breathed, paused, and reminded everyone watching that life is allowed to move forward.